Morning. Welcome to all of you. My name is David Koranyi. I'm the Deputy Director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. We are responsible for organizing the summit here. It's my pleasure to give you a very brief introduction to today's panel. In September last year, a tempest was looming in the Eastern Med. A Turkish exploration vessel named after the famed Turkish explorer Piri Reis, accompanied by warships and jets, approached a contested area of the newly discovered hydrocarbon resources around Cyprus. The direct confrontation was eventually avoided, but nevertheless this incident stoked fears that further instability in an already tense region. Oil and natural gas exploration is gearing up all across the Mediterranean, with potentially far-reaching implications on European energy security and relations with current suppliers. But due to a number of unresolved issues that we will discuss in detail in this panel today, harnessing the resources in the Eastern Med leads to a geopolitical minefield. This gas and potentially oil-rich basin stretches from Egypt through the Gaza strips and Israel's coastal waters all the way up to the Cypriot and Lebanese borders. The area off the coasts of Israel and Cyprus may contain natural gas for up to 9 years of the EU's annual gas demand at current consumption rates. So this new energy rush in the Eastern Med holds great promise. These abundant natural gas reserves could increase Israel's security and wealth, jumpstart the Palestinian economy, provide an incentive for the reunification of Cyprus, help satisfy Turkey's increasing energy demand, etc. Of course, in an ideal world, which we are not living in. But this Piri Reis incident, just to refer back to that, showed that how elusive these dreams could be. Today, none of the stakeholders seemingly show genuine interest in exploring a sustainable compromise solution. The question is, will we let this opportunity pass? Or, to throw in a very provocative idea here, just jumpstart the discussion, will the countries of the region, the stakeholders with possibly US and European Union help, be able to solve the seemingly intractable problems of today, and perhaps lie down the basis for a Middle Eastern coal and steel union for the future? This panel fits well into what we call the Eurasian Energy Futures Initiative at the Atlantic Council, which is essentially a series of events we do in the United States, in Washington, D.C., in Brussels, and in other national capitals throughout the wider Eurasian region on issues like these crucial geopolitical energy security issues for the future of the region. And the aim is to help keep these issues on the radar screen, because very often they tend to slip down or lower on the priority on the agenda of the decision makers. So thank you for coming, and without further ado, I will now turn to Jennifer Coolidge, our able moderator. Thank you very much.
Microphone on? Yes? Okay, great. Well, thanks to everyone for coming here today. We're competing with what does the recent presidential election in the United States mean for the future of U.S. foreign policy. So thank you for your interest in Eastern Mediterranean gas. It's going to prove to be an excellent session. I'll introduce the three speakers, and then I'll give a brief contextual overview of what we can expect the discussion to look like. So first we have Dr. Amit, the CEO of Eco Energy. Next we'll hear from Mr. Sachinis, the CEO of DEPA, the Greek state gas company. And finally, we will have Mr. Hugh, the project director for Turkey and Cyprus at the International Crisis Group. What I would like to do in terms of contextualizing today's discussion is to ask you to reflect on several factors. That, first of all, is the price of gas and the global and European gas market dynamics, especially since the global economic crisis in 2008, where at that time, pricing between the Asian, the National Balancing Point, and Henry Hub was quite tight. And we've gone through a period of the last 4 years where pricing has become very divergent, partly due to long-term take-or-pay oil indexed pricing, and also due to the development of shale gas in the United States. Asian pricing was also highlighted by the Fukushima incident. So I would encourage you to consider whether that highly divergent price regime is sustainable, and if so, for how long. Then we come to the situation in the European gas market. After the global financial crisis and the insistence by Gazprom of maintaining very high take-or-pay pricing at sometimes double the price that gas was available at hubs, European gas demand decreased by between 5 and 10% across Europe. Introduction of more renewables, introduction of efficiency measures. Then we're looking at two other factors. We will know around 2016 or after whether gas will arise in the form of LNG from the United States. And also after 2020 or around that time, whether unconventional gas development will be successful in Europe itself. So we have a picture of a variety of moving targets, interrelated factors, which will determine pricing in the European gas market and the global gas market. It will also determine demand and the demand growth trajectory. And then I would ask our panelists to consider where the development of Eastern Mediterranean gas fits within this larger picture. I will sum up by saying that I believe we're seeing a critical paradigm shift in the European gas market, where the supply-demand balance will remain tight for the next 2 to 3 years, but that at the end of that period, we will see the delinkage of oil-indexed gas pricing settle to a situation of competitive market regional hubs in Europe. So a much more competitive but also more volatile gas pricing regime within Europe. And with that, I'd like to turn to our first speaker. And our speakers will speak for between 5 and 10 minutes. Then we will open up to questions from the floor and engage in an interactive debate.
Thank you, Jennifer. And indeed, first I'd like to thank the Atlantic Council for inviting me to this incredible and important conference. Coming from Israel, I'll try to give a brief overview of the latest discoveries offshore in the Eastern Mediterranean, Israel, Cyprus, prospects in Lebanon, and the implications for Europe, as you suggested, possibly other markets. But these days, I have to, coming from Israel, I have to basically feel the need just to hint, as you know, beginning Wednesday afternoon, as I was just departing Tel Aviv airport, an additional new wave of violence began. In fact, it began a few weeks ago when additional wave of rockets launched by Hamas and Islamic Jihad from Gaza to southern Israel. Israeli government decided enough is enough. People, civilians cannot suffer any longer, and launched this operation. Basically, after 20 years, 21 years, sirens are heard in Tel Aviv. Personally, I believe that this wave of violence will end shortly, but basically it hints directly to the fragile security problems, which also have major effect on the energy developments and economic developments in the region. Saying that, Israel was blessed by major discoveries of natural gas in the past 4 years. In fact, the two largest discoveries of gas in the world took place offshore Israel. The Tamar field, 9 TCF, about 250 billion cubic meters, was discovered exactly 4 years ago by Noble Energy, a mid-size upstream company, American company, and its Israeli partners, Delek and others, 90-kilometer offshore Haifa, water depth of 1 mile, 1,600 meters water depth. And a year later, the Leviathan, which is a whale, Hebrew, a mega field of about 17 trillion cubic feet, 450 billion cubic meters, was discovered. The Tamar field itself can supply all Israel natural gas needs for the next 20 years at least, whereas the Leviathan could further supply gas to the domestic market and aimed especially at export. Now, we are experiencing a world record shift in the use to natural gas. Just 2 figures. 8 years ago, 80% of the power in Israel was produced by coal, 2 coal stations, and 20% by oil, heavy fuel oil, and diesel. Already 2 years ago, coal share reduced to 60% and gas increased to 40%. These 2 years, the past 2 years, and until next March, April, we are experiencing a shortage in gas due to the halt and cease of the Egyptian gas supply, talking about energy security issues, and also the depletion of the only field producing offshore Israel that started to produce 2004. So Israel Electric is utilizing a lot of heavy fuel, millions of tons of heavy fuel oil and gas oil to compensate for the lack of gas. Israel did not suffer electricity shortcuts as Jordan suffers, and the Jordanians in Amman sat a lot in the dark since they were 100% dependent on Egyptian gas, were not able to switch to alternative fuels. Electricity prices have increased by 30% in the past year, but very soon, March, April this coming year, Noble Energy and their partners will start supplying gas from the Tamar field, a $3.5 billion development. And again, in 2 years' time, 70% of our electricity will come from gas. Coal share will decrease to about 25%, renewables will increase. So basically, indeed, this is a world record in shifting to gas, in energy utilization, especially in power, but basically also all the industrial use will shift to gas, in fact, in the process of shifting, and including transportation and other sectors. Very, very quick transition. And with all the benefits of gas, a relatively low cost of gas in our region, about $5 per million BTU, versus more than $10 in Europe, about $3 in the US these days, 16, 17 and higher in Japan energy. So relatively low gas prices will benefit, and of course environmental benefits and energy security benefits in the long run. But in the shorter run, and that's another consideration to take, think about that. 70% of the electricity, all the industrial utilization, including transportation, hotels, hospitals, and so on, which are shifting to gas from one field, 90-kilometer offshore, 150-kilometer pipeline, a platform to treat the gas, which is located 20-kilometer offshore Ashkelon, 20-kilometer offshore Gaza. And this means that technical problems and earthquakes, and also especially military threats to this platform, which again mentioned 20-kilometer offshore Gaza, with Scuds, with Qassam, with Grads threats, that is the Israeli Navy and Israeli Air Force will need to protect this most strategic point, location for many years, basically devoting 1, if not 2, anti-missile missiles just to defend this strategic location. So with all the benefits of gas, there is also an energy security risk, which is, I think, is a national security risk for the next 5-6 years until additional entry point to the nation from the Tamar or the Leviathan field, possibly to the northern part of the country, and the diversification of gas will occur. Same stands for Cyprus. With Cyprus, Noble Energy and their partners Delek about a year ago, discovered the Aphrodite field just north to the Leviathan field. This is already in the Cypriot exclusive economic zone. And Cyprus is going quickly, hopefully, to develop their LNG plant in Vasilikos near Limassol, aiming at exporting gas to the international markets. Also, as my friend Harry from DEPA will probably expand and discuss the possibility of a pipeline from Israeli fields of Leviathan, or especially from the Aphrodite field or offshore Cypriot fields, Cyprus, Crete, mainline, Greece, and Europe. This is another option to export the gas. Other options for Israel are LNG project, an onshore LNG project of 2 or 3 trains, possibly in the Mediterranean town of Ashkelon or in Eilat on the top of the Red Sea, and with aiming the markets in East Asia. This is could be a major LNG project of 2 to 3 trains, 10 to 15 million tons of LNG, that is about 14 to 20 BCM a year. Although in high priority for the Israeli government, because not only exporting gas can create also job creation and multiplier effect. So not only 60% revenues to the government from the profits of gas sales, but also especially those important benefits. I think that, and the NIMBY, not in my backyard, and the major opposition for the public might prevent establishing such a project, promoting such a project. We'll see. Another option is FLNG, the new technology of floating LNG. Huge, those of you are not familiar. New technologies are huge ships like the major airplane carriers which are anchored above basically the offshore fields or nearby, and the gas is treated and liquefied on those ships where LNG tankers take the gas. First project by Royal Dutch Shell is under construction for Purdue Bay in Australia, and few projects are ongoing. I personally believe very much in this technology, and I think that in 7 to 10 years' time, we'll see 2 or 3 of them also offshore Israel. So there are few options, and the major discussion is taking place in Israel these days vis-a-vis energy policy, how much gas to devote for export, how much gas to leave for domestic consumption. The debate is postponed to after the elections, where a government committee, and we facilitate in this respect, advising the government, decided, but the cabinet should approve that policy, and we'll debate in the parliament, the Knesset as well, whether to allow 25, 30 years of reserves for domestic use and the rest to export, or to maintain reserves for domestic use for a longer time, major public debate. So, last remarks is the potential for regional cooperation in the field of natural gas utilization in the region. Israel, Cyprus, Greece, possibly future discoveries offshore Lebanon. The Lebanese are lagging behind, but next year I think they'll publish their tenders, and they're doing the seismic work and so on. So there is a potential for regional cooperation. Unfortunately, Turkey's policy in the past year, especially vis-a-vis Cyprus, and also the disengagement from the very close alliance between Israel and Turkey in the past 2 decades, is that one cabinet decision to disengage those relations and to escalate the relations are not contributing to the Turkish energy minister said yesterday, we should utilize natural gas and the hydrocarbon resource to enhance regional cooperation. In this respect, it is not benefiting the region, especially Cyprus. And I think, according to my vision and others, basically that those discoveries offshore Cyprus can also benefit the northern Cyprus, especially the hundreds of thousands of Turkish settlers in the region, and Turkey as a whole. Turkey should play a much more constructive role. Of course, I understand that the Turkish Erdogan's policy is much beyond energy and economic development in this region, but eventually in the long run, I hope that the relations will to Israel and Turkey, and hopefully eventually Turkey and Cyprus will become much better and enhanced for the future benefits of all nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Mr. Sachinis?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be speaking here, and I see ambassadors, CEOs, so I'm very pleased to see the interest on this subject. I just want to continue with what Amit just said, that we all hope for peace and prosperity in this region. But let me use the word prosperity because I think that brings us to the first premise of what I want to talk about, which is I think we should all be happy that there is gas in our area and that there is more gas in our area. Because the more gas there is more gas-to-gas competition. And that means that there will be lower prices. And lower prices, as long as there's extra gas in the region, means that this region is going to become more competitive. And I think this is going to be good for the countries and the people of the whole region. So the question then becomes, how do we take that gas and bring it out to the market, and maybe, so that we can have this gas-to-gas competition, how we can try to keep it in the region. Because if it goes far away to Asia and whatever, maybe we will miss some of that opportunity. So these are some of the things that I want to talk about, and I'll talk about them very briefly. So first of all, in terms of where do we see demand and what is happening with demand in the region. No one can predict demand. No one knows what is going to happen. Things change day by day. I mean, in the region, we've had offshore Romania, we've had new finds. We have now, yesterday, South Stream announcing that it's going to bring gas, maybe it is the same gas, but still it's going to bring gas to southeastern Europe. We have, because if you look at the whole market, not just the region, if you go even to Asia, you have Eastern Africa and off of Mozambique, new gas. You have Australian LNG. No one can really predict what is going to happen to demand, especially if you look down the path for about 30 years, which is a normal lifetime of a project like this. So the thing is that someone has to make decisions and make quick decisions to take advantage of the opportunity. And decisions in this region, unfortunately, take a long time. And I see some people, I see Mr. Vali Aleskarov here, probably has been trying to open up the southern corridor for I don't know how many years now and bring gas to Europe, 15 years, more than that. Or he's trying to negotiate, you know, Azerbaijan is trying to negotiate with Turkey on price revision, and the last time they did that it took 4 years, and now it has already taken 2 years. So we have to learn how to make faster decisions, because then I think we can be more productive, we can be more effective, we can bring better results to the region. The fact is, though, that as we look at supply and demand, within the uncertainty that I mentioned, it is a significant premise that the closer the gas stays, the better the netbacks are, so the better off the suppliers are, and the less expensive the prices are for the buyers. So the question is, how can we keep the gas closer to the area? Now, obviously, these are decisions that the companies that are involved in the gas finds of Cyprus and of Israel, they're going to make that decision together with the governments in that region. So the most important thing is for them to study all the options. Amit mentioned some of the options that exist there, and understand what these options are and evaluate the risks and figure out what the best option is. We looked at one of these options, and actually we looked at it by accident because people started talking about mountains that existed between Cyprus and Greece, and the impossibility of a pipeline being laid in that part of the world and so on. So we started looking to see what exactly is happening there. So we assigned the project to an international company, JP Kenny. They are one of the 2 experts on offshore pipelines. And basically the result is straightforward. It basically says that the pipeline can be constructed. It is doable. And the interesting thing that they also found is that the cost is reasonable. And what reasonable means is that it is less expensive than an LNG or an FLNG. And also, as a test of reasonableness, that the cost is similar, if not less, than the cost of bringing gas from Azerbaijan to the same points in Europe. So basically, you have a pre-feasibility study that says that option 2 is a plausible option, and it is both technically and economically feasible. But it's not for us to decide. It is for the countries and the companies that want to export that gas and to make sure that they know that this option is available to them as well. So we do believe, though, also that Southeastern Europe is a good market. We have done also a marketing study to see the alternatives of whether gas from this region could go to Asia and they could get a better price there. Obviously, we all know the big diversity of prices between the US, Europe, and Asia. In the US, you have $3 per million BTU price. In Europe, and unfortunately, in Turkey and Greece, we're suffering from high prices, higher than the rest of Europe. We're looking at about $12 to $13 per million BTU here in this region, which is quite expensive. And it goes back to my first point, that we want to make sure that there's more gas so we can drive prices down. And then you have Asia that is $17 to $18 per million BTU. Obviously, eventually, we see these prices converging. We believe that there is a market in Europe. Who knows how that market will evolve in the next 30 years. There is uncertainty, as I mentioned earlier. You have photovoltaics in Italy bringing gas demand down. You have the economic crisis, but you cannot look at the last 2 years or the next 2 years. You have to have a view of what may happen in the next 30 years. So basically, there are options. I think the most important thing is for all of us to work together to ensure that that gas becomes available in the region, because we have to look at the primary effect, and the primary effect is more gas means lower prices, which is something that the region needs.
Thank you, Mr. Sachini. Mr. Pope?
Thank you very much. It feels odd addressing an oil people's conference, an oil and gas people's conference from an NGO's perspective, but we'd had a very close look at the Cyprus angle on the East Med gas, in the hope that somehow the discovery of this gas could propel a settlement of the Cyprus problem, which has been one of the huge blockages in this region for so long. And it seemed like a new element that offered some hope. But I have to say that having done that investigation, I have many more questions than answers, and also I have to say that I absolutely agree with my colleague here. The length of time that this is all going to take seems to me considerable. I'd just like to raise the first question is, first of all, how much gas has actually been found off Cyprus? I mean, there's been just one hole drilled in the seabed, which has found gas, and possibly 7 trillion cubic feet, but also possibly 1 trillion cubic feet, or 15. No one knows until the second hole is drilled. So we're still discussing something quite possible. Obviously, there are other potentially very big fields elsewhere, the other 13 blocks that were given out, but I'd just like to underline that we don't know how much is there yet. The companies involved are small so far. The Noble Energy is not a big, well-funded company, and it made quite substantial losses recently. And even in Israel, there are question marks about how big and how long the companies can do, and how much they can afford to spend themselves on getting the gas out. And as Harry pointed out, the question of the value of the gas, we don't know what the long-term price is going to be, how much money is going to be available to exploit these quite deep fields, and certainly if we get into very expensive transport and solutions, then is it really going to be viable? On the other side, at least in Cyprus, there's a huge need for this gas to work out. Cyprus is in a dreadful economic state. Ever since their power station was blown up by a nearby weapons stash held as it went on its way to Syria, and knocked out half its power supply, Cyprus has been in an economic tailspin. And to just give you one figure that gives you an idea of how big that problem is, Cyprus banks have lent something like 120% of their GDP, their whole national product, to Greek private and public entities. This is money which they don't know whether they're going to get back, and Cypriot bonds are junk status. The budget deficit is not out of control, but things are looking pretty dire in Cyprus. They need a new story, and of course they have wrapped themselves around the gas story. But to me, it's questionable that how soon that can help Cyprus. So they need something quickly, I would say. So let's say that there is some gas. There is a good amount of gas there. What can be done with it? As my fellow panelists have said, there are three options. There's LNG plants on Cyprus or in Israel. There's the floating LNG plants possibly in the fields, and then a question of pipelines. On LNG, the current amount of gas appears to be only enough for one train if it's going to be on Cyprus. And I know that there's a lot of talk about making the gas in Aphrodite field on the Cyprus site and the Tamar and other field in Israel a joint development. But I would just underline that never in the history of hydrocarbon development has any country ever allowed another country to process its key natural resource. So I just don't see it happening. I think Cyprus is going to bring its gas onto Cyprus, and Israel is going to bring its gas to Israel. And that means that Cyprus is going to have to make do with the amount of gas it finds in Aphrodite, and currently that's enough, apparently, for just one LNG train, which is not, as far as the experts we talk to, a really good idea to, even if you can afford an LNG train, which, by the way, would cost Cyprus another half of its annual GDP to construct, if it could find the money. Floating LNG will be quite expensive, and if it was to be jointly done with the Israeli side, as I will bow to people who know the market better, but you come into very, very difficult Israeli taxation questions, at least as far as Cyprus is concerned, and I think in Israel as well. So those two, LNG, FLNG, it's possible, but it's really difficult. And LNG, of course, also makes you subject to the world LNG price, which, as Jennifer pointed out, is, we don't know where that's going to go. It's probably going to go down. So pipelines, I agree. People have looked at the Greece pipeline, but it's going to be long and expensive. I agree. It could be about the same price as a pipeline from Azerbaijan, but as you pointed out, a closer solution would be much cheaper. There was, of course, a possibility of sending the gas through Israel to the Arab pipelines and everything, but I think that would be completely dreamland. And then we come to Turkey. Now, a pipeline from Aphrodite to Turkey would be 1/10 of the cost of any other pipeline. It would have instantaneously a market. There are Turkish power producers right on the coast there that would snap up that gas immediately if it was available. Just one problem, a problem that has been cursing the region for the last 30 years, which is the Cyprus problem. And to be honest with you, if it's a question of saving Cyprus economically, normalization of relations between Turkey and Cyprus is the best economic medicine for Cyprus. If we take the Greek-Turkey example, they normalized in 1999 almost huge advances in trade, investment, mutual cooperation. It's been an immensely positive process. And if only Turkey and the Greek Cypriots could get over their mutual, it's almost a blood feud, then that would be the first thing that would help. And also it would make possible this pipeline. But here again, I have to just say, there is no sign of any progress on the Cyprus problem. It's stuck. The talks went through their fourth round between 2008 and about 6 months ago, trying to work out a very loose formula of bicommunal, bizonal federation under the UN. This is the fourth round of talks since the 1970s. It got nowhere, and there's no sign of it going anywhere soon. And to be honest with you, as far as Turkey is concerned, even though it would benefit from this gas, as far as I can see, the Turkish government is focused on finding its own gas in the Bay of Iskenderun, in its own territorial waters. They're working with Shell, and that is the hope. No one in Ankara is paying any attention to the Cyprus problem or solving the Cyprus problem, and especially since that's very closely linked to the EU-Turkey relationship. The Turkish Prime Minister in recent weeks has basically made statements saying that Turkey is no longer interested in its EU process, which is extremely disturbing for those of us who want Turkey to continue its integration with Europe. But since Cyprus and the EU-Turkey relationship are all welded together in an iron triangle which rises and falls together, I'm afraid it's at a low point. And at the moment, I think that the Cyprus problem is like a chess game where the two sides have managed to box each other in, where they can make 3 moves each, but neither side can knock the other one out. And if you like, the arrival of this huge gas potential, which could absolutely help everyone in the region, all it's done is to add a 3rd dimension to the chess problem. So now we're moving in 3 dimensions, and it's still stuck, I'm afraid.
Thank you. While the rest of you are contemplating your questions, I've got one that I would like to put to any of our panelists right now. There are significant boundary issues between the countries in the Eastern Med, and I would like to ask, one, how will those be resolved? And also, there is the different legal regimes in the 3 countries are at different stages of development, and so it strikes me that those need to be introduced in some areas, some countries, and in others need to be significantly tightened up. And so I would like to ask our panelists about their opinions on the boundary issues and the legal regimes and the timelines for those.
Maybe I'll start. Indeed, there are 4, I would say, major disputes over maritime borders in the Eastern Mediterranean. The 2 largest of them, major disputes, are between Turkey and Cyprus and Turkey and Greece. And they cover most of the eastern, mid-eastern Mediterranean, which impinge especially on the Cypriot natural gas developments. Turkey just announced a week, 10 days ago, that it will impose sanctions on international companies like Eni, Total, and other, which received the exploration rights just 2 weeks ago offshore Cyprus, if they'll continue their activity offshore Cyprus. So this is the consideration. Cyprus will maintain their activity, their exploration developments, and so on. And I also believe that those international, especially European and other, including, by the way, subsidiary of Gazprom. So I don't think that Turkey will eventually exercise such sanctions, my own opinion, but this exists. The Cypriot, the Turkish Greek, maybe my friend Harry can relate to that. There is also a small, relatively very small technical dispute between Israel and Lebanon, only over less than 1,000 kilometer squares. Basically, I truly think that in addition to this dispute might be utilized and was utilized already by the Hezbollah and others in Lebanon to make some political gains, very quietly, by third parties negotiations, direct negotiations between the parties. I think that this issue eventually will be resolved, and it is not affecting Israelis' exploration rights, and maybe it will impinge on Lebanon's basically. I would say efforts to attract international companies. I think that the international companies will come to Lebanon. This is the relatively small disputes. One very good example of how to settle such disputes, there is a natural gas field which was discovered just on the maritime border between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, just near between Ashkelon and Gaza, offshore. The small field, Noah field, British gas. which found back more than a decade the Gaza Marine Field, which again, still not developed offshore Gaza. But there was another small field, the Noah Field, and the decision, basically agreement took place between the parties that if this field is going to be developed in the future, it's going to be mutual development, Israeli and the Palestinians by then British Gaza. Eventually, this field is too small, smaller to develop. The northern part of that was developed by Noble Energy just last year, but not the mutual field. So there are ways to go about that. Israel and Cyprus, of course, delineated their maritime economic zones, and no doubt that some of south to Aphrodite, north to Leviathan, there are mutual discoveries or mutual fields, which, if and when developed, will mutually be developed. I think that basically those disputes exist, especially Turkey and Cyprus, as you mentioned. You and Turkey and Greece, if you can please hurry elaborate on that.
I have one corollary to that, and just to note for the audience that Egypt, Lebanon, Cyprus, and Greece are members of UNCLOS III, the Law of the Seas, and Turkey, Israel, and Syria are not members. So I don't know if you have any clarification with that in mind.
Well, I mean, that's a fact, so it's clarifications, are not necessary. You just mentioned the fact. The other fact that I want to mention is that Greece and Turkey have a very close relationship. I think that's very positive for the region, and I think within the framework of that relationship, the governments and their foreign ministries will work to iron out any differences that may exist in maritime borders or anything like that.
If anyone's really interested in the details, you can find, we went to quite a lot of effort to get the maps out in our, on crisisgroup.org. You can find, it's called Aphrodite's Gift, the report, which shows how very big the differences are and how very difficult it will be to resolve. And despite what Mr. Sachinis says about the Turkey-Greek relations, which are very good, Turkey and Greece have now met 52 times to discuss this in the last 10 years, and they have not managed to solve it. And I personally believe that that it cannot, the Cyprus territorial water issue will not be solved without a Turkey-Greek agreement. And if you are able to see this big line around Cyprus is what Cyprus thinks that it should control, and this big lump of the Mediterranean is what Greece thinks it should control, and this version here is what Turkey thinks it should control. And one can, on the question of threats, by the way, I don't think Turkey will ever actually fire a gun on this, but it doesn't have to. I think that it is quite effective in threatening sanctions and putting warships close to things. That's normally enough to frighten people. But any pipeline that was going to, obviously the pipeline's going to go first to Cyprus from Aphrodite Field, which is very far south of Cyprus, you'll notice. It'll go up there and then across to Crete. That goes across a part that Turkey is determined will not be ceded to anyone else. And this, until the Aegean Sea problem is resolved between Turkey and Greece, I don't think we'll see a resolution of this one. And we've also done a report on the Aegean Sea thing, and there's no sign of anybody getting close there. However, Cyprus has very wisely managed to delimit most of its maritime borders with Lebanon and Israel and Egypt, and those, as far as anyone can see, are pretty solid. And I would say that actually, if anybody does find anything in places like the blocks like that are not close to anything claimed by Turkey, which if you want to look, most of the blocks of Cyprus are not claimed by Turkey. I would imagine that they would find a way to exploit them without coming into any direct conflict with Turkey. But you know, it's all interconnected, and it's unfortunately no one seems to have the magic wand to make the problem go away.
Just want to make a technical clarification. You can lay things at the bottom of the ocean. There are already telecommunication cables. that connect Greece and Cyprus and Israel, and there are plans to also lay a cable for electricity, and that's another way for actually Cyprus to export the value of the gas that is around Cyprus, because they can bring the gas and produce electricity on the island and then export the electricity to either Israel or to Greece or wherever. So you do not need an EZ to be delineated in order to lay something at the bottom of the ocean or of the sea.
Thank you. I understand we have microphones in the room now. I would like to open up, we have about 25 minutes that we can take questions from the floor. I still have a few more, but do we have questions right now pending? I'm sure we must. All right, well, while you're thinking about this, then I would like to continue on my line of questioning and asking our respondents to consider the development of Eastern Mediterranean gas in light of the current developments in the Southern Corridor. As we know, there has been a decision to build the TANAP Trans-Anatolian pipeline, and by the end of June next year, there will be a decision by SOCAR and its partners between Nabucco West and the Trans-Adriatic pipeline. I've already raised in my opening remarks the issue of European gas demand and the uncertainty in the global gas market, given developments in unconventional gas and the potential for export of LNG from the United States, and the timeline of uncertainty in Europe in the next 2 to 3 years vis-a-vis pricing, and the timeline of uncertainty in the global market, especially the LNG market. So I would like to ask the panelists to comment on the development. We've heard a lot about the challenges for development of Eastern Med gas, piped gas, LNG, floating LNG, but I'd like them to comment on specifically on how we could see development of Eastern Med gas in relation to the Southern Corridor, number one, and also in relation to the South Stream pipeline, which, as you know, yesterday the final FID was signed between Miller and Borisov in Bulgaria after about 10 days of signings in different countries. So I would like to welcome your thoughts on where the Eastern Med gas development fits into that larger picture.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think it is interesting to see that South Stream took the FID yesterday, and they're moving forward, because I think that will make everyone else try to move faster. It's a pity for the region. I think that Shah Deniz has not moved earlier. It has taken too long for the Southern Corridor to open up, and it's still taking time. And I think there should have been earlier, faster commitments to some project, any project, for the gas to start flowing. Because now discussions of, okay, let's not do Nabucco, let's do TANAP, and how much will TANAP cost, and who are going to participate in TANAP, and how does that get involved with the price of Azerbaijan to Botas, and who's going to buy the gas. I mean, it cannot take 15 years for all that to happen. I mean, people miss out on opportunity by doing that, and most of it is the region that misses out on this opportunity, the opportunity of more gas, the opportunity of lower prices. But I think now with South Stream saying, okay, let's start the race, I think hopefully things will move on the Southern Corridor. And the other interesting thing is timing of the gas from Cyprus and Israel. It all also depends on political decisions. When is Israel going to decide how much gas they're going to export? There is gas there. We know that, and I think there is a lot of gas. The United States Geological Survey says that there's actually even much more gas, 3 times the gas that has already been discovered is available in the region. So the interesting thing is, does Israel wait for the elections and post the elections to figure out how much they want to export? Do they decide that now? But if you are looking for a market that is somewhat limited, and if you think of the premise that the closer you take your gas to, the better it is for you because you get a higher netback, then you may actually indeed have a race between the gas from Azerbaijan and the gas from Israel and Cyprus. Because if they were to make the decision today, that gas could be available into Europe by year 2018. So, and that's around the time that gas from Azerbaijan is going to be available. But my bet is that probably it will take longer for the politicians in those two countries to make their decision about when to export the gas and how much to export.
I'll elaborate a bit vis-a-vis how is a very good question. As I mentioned, Israel is a democracy, and it's very important for public debate to take place. Should have been taken these days, but the elections are due to scheduled January, so it will take another few months, possibly a year. It's a very important debate, very democratic, and very, as we had a major debate just 2 years ago vis-a-vis the taxation system, increasing the taxes for offshore hydrocarbon basically sales from 25% to 60%, which is about the world average. It was a very lively democratic debate, and the government, as representing the country, the people eventually decided to increase taxation on that, so we are expecting this debate. But as mentioned, there is a major decision to take place. If export is going to be done via LNG, and I should also say not necessarily gas should be exported via gas, LNG, or liquefied natural gas, for example, or a pipeline. It can, a country can produce, and this is starting to be debated, and we are working on a major study these days about that, can produce methanol with gas. We can produce ammonia and urea fertilizers with gas, and eventually down the road, petrochemicals, and with much higher value added to the export of gas for both domestic consumption and for especially exports. So here, government should play a bit with the prices of gas, because offshore Israeli or Cypriot gas, same Cypriot government starting to consider also possibly producing higher value like methanol, ammonia, urea from the gas and export gas via those means. So this is debated. Government could play with the prices of gas, because it's difficult to compete with very, very cheap gas in the Persian Gulf, in Qatar, in Abu Dhabi, or in Saudi Arabia, in petrochemicals, methanol, and so on. Fertilizer production, gas cost is 10 cents, not more than 30 cents per million BTU, whereas the gas price in this region is much higher. But government can play, basically taking account the cost-benefit, doing a cost-benefit analysis to the nation, and can facilitate in arranging prices in this respect. I hope that will be done. So a major decision. If it's going to be LNG, so the markets obviously, especially in the Far East, China, India, and of course Japan, which post-Fukushima is going to increase, still increasing its consumption of gas, of LNG, Taiwan and Korea, of course, as well. If the decision will be, and I think both decisions should be considered, such two projects to install a pipeline via Cyprus, Crete, mainline Greece to Europe. I'm not so optimistic vis-a-vis the timetable that will take, not maybe 15 years or more, and basically talking somewhere in the next decade. But also an LNG project will take at least a decade. To FLNG possibly quicker. So if we are talking on LNG, so the markets are not necessarily Europe, it's a commodity in a way, and this LNG from Cyprus, Israel, on the European markets will compete with other LNG sources. If it's a pipeline, of course, dedicated, and possibly in the longer run, this pipeline might materialize in addition to LNG project. So that's the implication of a decision. Where are the markets? Far East or Europe, if we are talking on a pipeline?
Again, I find myself agreeing completely with Mr. Sachinis here. I mean, this whole business is shining a bright, bright light on the inefficiency and the cost of the inefficiency of decision-making in Turkey and in surrounding states. I mean, Turkey is stuck at the moment it's a medium income, second division developing country. And to get to the next level, it has to start making strategies and plans and getting things done. I mean, we've seen this. The current government has done perhaps more than any previous government with the most effective prime minister we've had. But we've seen the EU negotiations taken up to the top of the hill and now completely stagnant. The Cyprus issue was nearly solved, but now it's in a worse position than ever. The Armenian question was nearly dealt with, but now it's back in the drawer. The Kurdish question and the PKK insurgency, these were, again, very nearly solved, but now have become even worse. We're back to the 1990s. And I could go on making examples of things that Turkey has tried to solve in the last 10 years and has not solved. And the failure to get the most simple, direct solution, for instance, on gas, as I said, 1/10 of the cost, a ready market, and even 5 billion cubic meters could go on to Greece through the existing Turkish system. Everybody would win, but the political system is not producing solutions for Turkey, and I think that's not just in Turkey, I think it's nearby states too. So I think again, it's going to be slow, Turkey's going to lose out, and Turkey wants to be in, I hope it wants to be in the first division of nations, but this constant delay is holding it back all the time.
Thank you. Great. We have a question at the floor here. Do we have a microphone from the back? The gentleman in the second row. Second row. Could you please identify?
Thank you. Good morning. Mithat Rende, Director General Multilateral Economic Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Turkey. We were invited a long time ago when we started discussions on recent gas discoveries in the Mediterranean to Rome, and it was a very useful forum organized by the National Defense University of Washington to discuss whether recent gas discoveries would further destabilize the situation in the Mediterranean and in the Middle East. It was a very useful discussion, and then we had many meetings and conferences, and Mr. Pope, I appreciate very much the contribution he made to this discussion with his paper. I would like to draw your attention to a last press release dated 3rd November by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And in this press release, the 3rd paragraph reads as follows: the Turkish Cypriots, like the Greek Cypriots, have equal and inherent rights over the natural resources located on the whole continental shelf of the island. Disregarding this reality and the continuation of unilateral and provocative activities by Greek Cypriots are not acceptable both to Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots. So this is, as of today, the views. And then it follows, it says the attention of the international oil companies had been repeatedly drawn as regards the adverse consequences that would be created by their activities in the disputed areas, and that Turkey will not be, any company will not be allowed to take part in any new energy projects in Turkey if they are engaged in this disputed area. So this is the situation as of today. And there's no need to probably repeat that the Turkish Cypriots have equal and inherent rights over the offshore resources of the island. This is the situation. And finally, probably there's no need to repeat that the only solution to the gas in the Eastern Mediterranean is to lay a pipeline and connect to the Turkish grid, and from there to Europe. LNG has been discussed, but commercially it's not viable. And given the recent developments and the shale gas revolution, it's highly unlikely that the Eastern Mediterranean gas can be commercially viable through an LNG system. there is no need to spend billions of dollars to establish LNG structures in the Mediterranean. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renda. I would like to add one further question for you and to open to the panel. Just to clarify, could you bring the mic back up, please? Just to clarify, where Cypriot and Israeli gas is concerned, have I heard you correctly that the solution for both states, or is it the solution for the Cypriot gas, is to lay a pipeline into the Turkish mainland and the Turkish grid?
There is a need for a common solution. The gas, the Israelis, they will find the best way, and I'm sure there are many private companies which are already discussing this issue and trying to develop projects for the Israeli gas to reach the markets. And we should keep in mind that as of today, shale gas prices in the United States is about $3 per million BTU, while the same prices differ. The shale gas or gas prices differ a lot in Europe and in Japan. So while the Israeli companies will definitely, together with their American partners, will definitely find the best way, and we hope that relations can be normalized and then the best solution can be found. But I don't believe that the Israelis will end up spending $10 billion or $8 billion and building LNG terminals for their Leviathan or other structures. And then in the end, we do hope that we will reach a negotiated solution, and that there will be a comprehensive settlement. And then we will be able to make use of the gas in the Eastern Mediterranean as a whole through a system which will be bankable and commercially viable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. I think both the Turkish government, Israeli government, and the Cypriot governments fully understand, and especially the Turks in this respect, that as long as was discussed by you and others, the geopolitical situation between Cyprus and Turkey, and in the longer run improvement, I do hope, in the relations between Israel and Turkey are dissolved, this option, which is the most economic option, and we ran a pre-feasibility study a few years ago for Gazprom. Then the idea was to bring Russian gas via Turkey, offshore Eastern Mediterranean to Israel. We did a pre-feasibility study of that. At that time, even LNG cost would be lower than this pipeline, but it makes so much sense economically. But as mentioned, everybody understands, geopolitically, it is not feasible in the foreseen future. Only when those geopolitical disputes, Cyprus, Turkey, and basically improvement of the relations between Israel and Turkey will enhance. And then we have to learn something from the various energy security or gas security threats which were materialized in the past decade. Russia and Ukraine cut the flow of gas to Europe several times. Even Turkey lately cut the flow of gas to Greece due to domestic needs. Egypt and Israel. Egypt cut the flow of gas to Israel and Jordan. So would one imagine that Israel and Cyprus would lay a pipeline via Turkey? Well, the political risk is too high. So each country will, as you said very correctly, and I agree, will find its own course to export the gas.
I just want to repeat my first premise. The more gas that flows in the region, the better off everybody is. Let's make sure that we make it easy for more gas to flow in the region. It will help all the countries in the region.
I want to take another question from the floor, the front row here.
Well, I would like to comment
Please identify yourself.
Friedbert Pflüger, King's College London. I would like to go back to Mr. Pope, who who basically made a strong criticism of Turkey not to settle conflicts around Turkey. Well, there's a lot is true. Some I think is questionable. I think the progress on the Kurdish issue is enormous. Good relationship with the Kurds. So the PKK issue today is a side issue, and there's a great relationship developing between Erbil and Ankara. But I think the worst in this whole region, the worst development of the last years, you did not mention, and that is the cooling of the Turkish-Israeli relationship, which has been an enormously important stabilizing factor for the region for long. And if there is anything, one thing that has to be fixed first, then it is the deep confrontation we have seen between Israel and Turkey in the last 2 years to emerge. Nobody says that Israel shouldn't be criticized. There's a lot of reason for that. But to do it in the way the Turkish government has done this, just in my point of view, is too far, and it puts a big counterproductive movement to the region, but also to Turkey itself. So I think that is a precondition for solving all this Mediterranean gas thing, is that Turkey and Israel get to terms again. Second point that I would like to mention is the EU. So we put a lot of blame to Turkey in the moment, but it has also a lot to do that the EU as a player is practically not visible anymore, because it has to deal with its own problems. It cultivates its own garden, Euro crisis and so on. We need a much more active role of the European Union, again, solving the Cyprus question, bringing forward the negotiations with Turkey. And if Turkey sees a real perspective, becoming EU member, not as a big vision, but as a concrete possibility, then we will have a lot of chances to solve these enormously important question of gas in the region. So it's the political framework, Turkey-Israel and EU-Turkey, which will make it much more easy to get use of this enormous richness of gas in the region.
As we wind up, I want to take one more question or comment. I see Mr. Renda, Ambassador Renda, with a question or comment there, and then I will open to final, very brief comment from our panelists so that we can maintain our time frame.
Sorry to ask for the floor again. As regards Turkish-Israeli relations, I understand that it was discussed before my arrival, and I happen to be the contact person of Turkey when we dealt with the Mavi Marmara issue, and I also chaired the National Commission, the Turkish National Commission, which prepared the report to be submitted to the UN panel on the issue of Mavi Marmara. I honestly believe that Turkey did its part, and we did our best to convince the panel and the Israeli side that they should do their part and apologize and pay compensation so that we can normalize relations. And it took us about a year to work on the matter. And unfortunately, we could not convince the Israeli side that they should do their part. And the United Nations Council on Human Rights, the Human Rights Council in Geneva, they also issued a very comprehensive report and also urged Israel to officially apologize, and the Israeli side did not. So it was it's a problem. It remains with us to be resolved, and I hope that the situation will change, and then the two sides will get together and we will normalize relations. But it's not fair to blame Turkey for what has happened. It's not fair. The situation is quite complicated, and we cannot simplify it. And with respect to the situation in the island, I really do agree that the European Union did not do much, to say the least, to contribute to the resolution of this matter, which has been with us for over half a decade, half a century. So let me also probably remind that the Turkish petroleum, with its license that it got from the Turkish Cypriots, they will be also drilling in the areas which are overlapping and the concession blocks which were declared by the Turkish Cypriots. And they overlap with that of the Greek Cypriots blocks. And it's likely that they will strike gas in the same areas. And it will make the situation more complicated. It's another possibility. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give our panelists each a 1-minute summary, starting with Hugh, moving to Harry, moving to Amit, and then I will give a final concluding remark. Microphone.
Sorry, ample evidence that that there isn't currently a momentum towards solving the problems that have divided all the countries here in the East Mediterranean in a way that they could find a joint solution. And I really regret to say that I think that Turkey has chosen not to pursue its EU perspective, just as much as there's been cold water, yes, from the EU. But Turkey is the applicant. Turkey needs the EU process. What we are enjoying in Istanbul today, this extraordinary economic growth, and especially visible in Istanbul, has been the result of the hard-done EU reform process of the early part of the 2000s, which has stopped around the 2007, I would say, and has been unraveling since then. And along with that has been the very unfortunate emotional approach to Israel. If anyone wants, I can cite 4 cases in which I believe Israel indeed made the Turkish relation worse than it had to be. That Israel chose to escalate it, but Turkey also behaved rashly and emotionally, and it has done so with all of its neighbors. We had a situation 3 years ago where we had really an almost zero problems environment for Turkey. Now one can count 8 neighbors and near neighbors with which Turkey has conflictual relationships. Turkey has to get back to a more neutral approach, I agree, with Israel, with all the parties. That was a goal. In 2008, Turkey was sitting in a wonderful position where it could fly everywhere in the region and be treated and talked to as a respected, neutral player in the region. And with something of a strong multilateral approach. Turkey is now acting more as a lonely player, as a lone player. And I think in terms of developing the resources of the region and making sure that everyone gets more prosperous together, it has to get back to that position.
I absolutely agree with that position of moving faster. We should not give up on finding solutions. We should redouble our efforts on finding solutions. We should move faster. We should move faster on clearing the situation between Azerbaijan and Turkey and making sure that Sudanese gas flows through Turkey to Europe as soon as possible. And we should make sure that we do not obstruct any new gas coming to the region. It is very important. We have to look long term. Gas can't bring prosperity in more than one ways.
I am, of course, representing myself, not the Israeli government, a business company, and specializing in Middle East energy, and especially natural gas and so on. I agree with the ambassador, Turkish ambassador, vis-a-vis the need to resolve the Israeli-Turkish tension. I understand that high-level negotiations continue to take place. I also think that the Marmara issue was an excuse for the Erdogan government to disengage from Israel. Had it not been the Marmara, there would be another. And I don't judge or evaluate basically Turkey's geopolitical consideration in this respect. Has a much higher view. At the end of the day, I still I think that the two stable countries in the region are Turkey and Israel, thriving democracies and stable in a very fragile environment. And at the end, might take 2 years, 10 years, the countries will enhance their geopolitical relations. I'd like to, which of course will also be positively to the development of the hydrocarbons in the region. And hopefully, and I hope indeed that Turkey and northern Turkey will find oil and gas. If oil will find, it's a new game changer. Just one word that I would like to share with you, my visions and others in Israel. I do hope that in 20 years' time, more than 50% of our transportation fleet will run on gas. And in 4 major technologies, already plug-in electric cars are introduced in Israel, and since 70% of the electricity in 2 years' time are going to be produced by gas. So electric cars is natural gas-based and eventually renewable energy, solar energy to fuel our cars. Secondly, it's compressed natural gas technologies. Thirdly, this is methanol. I'm a great believer in methanol. Methanol, a liquid like gasoline that can be produced from natural gas, from methane gas, and we can fuel our fleets with methanol. And lastly, gas to liquids producing gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel from natural gas. This is doable. It's a very small country of entrepreneurs, and I think we can do it in 20 years' time, most of our fleet. And same in the US with a very cheap gas. I think that this is a vision to our country, to the nation, and to the world eventually.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank all our panelists. I think we've had a very lively debate. I'd like you to leave you with one thought, and that is what I tried to bring out at the beginning is that the global and European gas markets are going through a significant transition and a paradigm shift right now with a lot of moving parts, interrelated parts, none of which are entirely pinned down. And I'm referring to unconventional gas development, the LNG market, and the future gas demand growth trajectory, especially in Europe, the pricing situation in Asia, Europe, and the US. And that in itself is a huge question mark or set of question marks. And then I believe we add to this the potential, the significant potential with Eastern Mediterranean gas, but with that also comes its own host of not only legislative issues, commercial and technical issues, but also geopolitical issues. So we are putting in a whole new set of variables, and that, I believe, is why this question of how and when and to where Eastern Mediterranean gas will be produced and potentially exported will remain a set of questions for the foreseeable future. But I think we've had an excellent panel. I want to thank all of you for coming.